Welcome in, guys. We are live here. Great to have you with us on Talking Ball, y'all. It's Jason Dewey and Lance Lacoste. Lance excited for another week of high school action, and Cass is going to try to join us in a little bit. He had some things he had to attend to, but really excited about another week of action.
Yeah, I always say from week 1 to week 2, that's when you learn the very most about your football team. Sometimes it's stuff that you thought you knew from week 1 that plays out to not be so true in week 2. Sometimes it's just new stuff that you really learn about. I think more than anything, the toughness and the ability of your team and guys prepare for week 2. So, some people had a great week 1. Some people had a rude awakening week one, right? And so week 2, I think, is always when kind of people start to learn more about their football team and start to get into that groove for the season. So always excited about week 2.
Yeah, and guys, for the record, I'm not doing nonsense over here. I'm making sure we get all the links posted all the places. So, but Lance, you as a former coach, I want to ask you this last week. When everybody talks about that jump from week 1 to week 2, why is it so much more significant than we see maybe from the Jamboree to week 1? Because you assume the second game out, you're going to see that drastic improvement, but you're not alone. Every coach I've talked to has said that week 2 is the biggest jump. So why do you believe that is?
So I think week 1, you really, from the Jamboree to week 1, the main thing you really accomplish, I think, in the Jamboree is like your pregame preparation as far as like just how we're getting off to the bus, getting into the locker room, walk the field, pregame, that type of stuff, which certainly that's important, right? I mean, that more than anything, that just takes some stress off of these head coaches as they're preparing for the game. The guys just kind of know where to go. Coaches know where to go, all that type of stuff. But I don't think in a Jamboree you really learn. You obviously don't have 4 full quarters. And so for that reason, you just don't get into the same situations that you would maybe get into week 1. You're going to have, in week 1, you're going to have way more real-time special teams plays. There's just more in the line in a lot of ways. So, certain stress moments that you probably don't get too stressed out about in the Jamboree because it don't really count. In week 1, it becomes a lot more high stress. And when there's high stress on that sideline, just how you're handling everything on the sideline goes a long way. And yes, I think more than anything, you take on more situations in that true full 4-quarter week 1 than you did in the Jamboree. And so, from there, there's just always a lot to learn. Last week the theme was some missed field goals. And it wasn't just missed field goals. It was, some botched field goals, block kicks, that type of stuff that, you usually don't maybe get in the Jamboree, but you kick more of them in week 1. So there's just more to take away from, I think, in week 1.
Yeah, you're absolutely right about that too. We saw a lot of special teams miscues, as we mentioned, which is, call a spade is typically regular in high school football in general. However, week 1 seemed to have a lot more than usual. So I think moving forward, you're going to see that type of stuff cleaned up. But I'm interested to see how teams look moving forward. Lance, we talked about an action-packed week 1 on Sunday. We recapped a bunch of these games. We got to preview them last week. Unfortunately, you weren't there. Now we flipped Cass. So, but so much great football being played, and looking forward to week 2. I know one game that you had pinpointed that we're going to dive into is Denham Springs taking on Central. I am really excited to see this one. Central comes in 1-0 after a 7-point win over De La Salle after 2 red zone stops at the end of the game to win that ball game. And Denham Springs is a team that you mentioned over text to me earlier, but I've kind of been noticing is really a team that people are not keeping their eye out on, but really we'll see early on with this test how good Denham Springs can be.
Mm-hmm. So the things I know about Denham Springs, they have a big, strong football team. They're an old, mature football team. They have 43 seniors on their varsity football teom. That is an eye-opening number. In my coaching days, we never had that many seniors, right? And what comes with that is, I'll take a step back. They have an incredible strength coach and by the name of Joe Ryan. He runs the Moffitt method. We're going to get him on here at some point as a host, possibly even tonight. I tried to get him on, but when you combine a really good strength program with an old football team, you're talking about just a big, strong, physical football team that's very confident. And so, I think that's what they bring to the table. I believe it was last week they beat Zachary. They were down 14-0, came back, won 17-14. And so they want to be very physical. They want to run the football, and they're really excited about that chance, versus Central this week.
Yeah, you mentioned it. A win over Zachary is never anything to overlook, regardless at what point in the year. A preseason jamboree, it's a game, though, right? I mean, you're still strapping up your pads and your chin strap, buckling your chin strap, and go and hit somebody. So I think when people kind of overlook the jamboree, you're still going out there and playing football. It might not be the full 4 quarters, but it is still, live action. They got the Goldman twins on this team too. Quarterback Dijon and the receiver Deshaun. I've seen some of these guys clips, man. They really connect well. Really some talented guys. And you also have Brenton Paul, a really solid running back for Denham Springs, who you're going to have to keep an eye out for. They have playmakers on offense. They can move the football. But Central has arguably the best defense in the state. A ton of guys that they are going to be putting out on the field. Like I said, 2 goal line stands just a week ago. Lane Billings, transfer from Live Oak, is a huge playmaker. And also, you've got you've got depth on that ball club. And you also have JaMichael Garrett, kid that transferred in from Gulf Shores this past year, 4-star recruit, really big playmaker. I don't know if you've gotten to see any clips on him. He's a bruiser. He's a playmaker, and there's a reason he was visiting LSU this past weekend. So I'm interested to see that matchup. Maybe one that's flying a bit under the radar, but nonetheless should be a really intense game between 2 good football teams.
Yeah, no doubt. Definitely keeping up with that one.
Next up, we're going to be looking at Calvary taking on Neville. Neville, of course, eking out that 1-point win at home just this past week against Evangel. On the opposite side, you have Calvary, who had a big win over Oak Grove. Brylan Huglong is a fantastic receiver for Calvary Baptist, who interested to see how he does against this secondary. Neville's secondary is downright physical and dirty. I mean, they have a bunch of playmakers on that side of the football. And if you go back and watch the tape against Evangel, defense and special teams really clawed them back into that game. I am fascinated to see this matchup.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of hit it. I think I was looking at the Neville secondary versus the passing, the passing attack of Calvary. Seems like it's going to be a heck of a matchup. How those two play out. I think that Neville beat Evangel last week, correct?
Correct.
Yeah, and so you got to think they're pretty prepared for a similar style of football, right? Almost seems like the perfect tune-up game week 1 if you're going into week 2 versus Calvary. So, it's definitely going to be another good matchup.
Yeah, and I would expect some offense from both teams as well. Neville also has Parker Robinson, who is a really solid quarterback, getting some looks from some teams, and he has some weapons offensively. Sophomore running back of theirs really looked impressive in that ball game against Evangel. And to your point, they definitely have some practice against that passing attack. So it'll be fascinating to see how that matchup plays out. But Calvary is a team on a mission too, after just a year ago losing out in the semifinals. So it should be a fun one to watch. Let's go ahead and move on to U High taking on Rummel. Rummel dropping that game to LCA by 1 point, of course, last week after a blocked PAT. And U High is just loaded. I mean, it's you can continue to dance around it, but they have the number 1 player, some would say, in the country, in Lamar Brown, really phenomenal offensive lineman, but also plays both ways as a defensive lineman as well. They have a stable of running backs. They've got a guy who's been waiting his turn at quarterback and is ready to take the reins, and some younger playmakers at wide receiver. This is going to be an interesting matchup. Can Rummel come out after going on the road in the Superdome on the big stage? How will this game shake out?
I mean, it's great. I almost feel like I'm repeating myself from the previous matchup, but it feels like Rummel just went against LCA, school that a little bit smaller school, but loaded at every level, and now they're going against U High. It's almost like it feels like a perfect tune-up game prepared for U High would have probably been playing against LCA, And so I know they don't bring quite the. I know they have a good quarterback at U High, not quite the talent that they faced at LCA, but. Similar in the sense that there's a really good running back returning all district. Sage Ingram coming back for U High. They have 2 really good receivers that have offers from all over the place. So there's going to be, and then you mentioned it, Lamar Brown, the LSU commitment, one of the top, if not the top tackle, possibly in the country. So they have a special talent at Union, excuse me, at U High that is at literally every level, right? Just like Romo went up against at LCA last week. So I think more than anything, there's no doubt Romo's going to be prepared when they get to the Catholic League, right? I mean, there's some serious non-district games that that Romo has prepared, and this is one that's at the Dome too. So that's going to be a great deal as well for those teams to get to play in the Dome. Usually, you only get to play in the Dome is if you make it to the state championship. So it's really cool for these teams to get to experience the Superdome.
What's going to be I would say one of the more interesting matchups in this game is going to be how the rushing attack of Rommel looks against this defensive line of U High. Big guy up front, Mason Smith for U High, is a guy who's been getting some attention, and I think he's the guy that's going to be a pivotal point in this game. Rommel returned 2 guys at running back, and we'll see how they look. I think I'm excited to watch this.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great point. Like, that's where, it's great. So U High, their strength is going to be that D tackle, DN, as well as the middle linebacker, Lane Dixon coming back as well, committed to the Demons, Northwestern State. And so, Rommel has to be able to run the football and play their style of football, right? They got to be able to control the clock, get first downs. If U High can stop that, then you're talking about a lot of quick possessions, giving the ball back. So Romo's really got to be able to establish the run game, and on the opposite side for U High, they got to be able to stop the run game. It's probably going to come down to that.
Yeah, and look, Rommel passed the ball pretty well last week too, and putting themselves in position to even be in the ball game at the end. I think it's a tough. Lance, we talked about it. Cass has personal experience going there. That's a tough place to play. There's the fireworks and the beautiful facilities over there. It's a party. It's a big party, and you're just one piece of that spectacle as an opposing team. So you go from that spectacle to I don't know, playing in the Superdome. So you don't get much of a reprieve from that, but I'm really excited to see how that one shakes out. So looking at our next matchup, we have Holy Cross taking on De La Salle. Lance, we are not calling this game. We had mentioned that we believed we were going to be calling it, but really exciting game. What's the biggest key for this matchup that you see between one team coming off a big win, a lot of emotion, a lot of up and down energy in that Edie White game for Holy Cross, and on the other side, you have De La Salle, who probably feels like they let one slip through their fingers in that loss against Central on the road.
Yeah, both had really tough, matchups in week one. One came out just ahead with a win. One just came away with a loss. And so it's just, it's always you're looking back at those games thinking about where you could have been just a little bit better if you De La Salle and gotten off to a 1-0 start. But I think for Holy Cross, they really proved to themselves that they can win in a different way than what they had to do last year. And what I mean by that, the offense really stepped up, put up a good bit of points, and when they needed it the most, it was the offense that really came through with their new quarterback, Jacoby Ferraria, as well as Kieron Smith, who Kieron's been doing this since he's a freshman, so he's not new to anything. But, they had a couple receivers that really stepped up for Holy Cross as well that are pretty – not new to the team, but definitely not guys that they were counting on as playmakers last year. And so it's really cool to see Holy Cross just find a way to win last week and more through the offense. I think on the flip side of that, though, I'm sure Coach Watney and Coach Connors were not super happy about the way their defense gave up some big plays down the stretch. And so that is going to be key for this game for Holy Cross. Can't give up big plays to De La Salle. De La Salle, they're going to be good at running back. Coach Graham Jarrett's going to do a great job with that offensive line. And so, they're going to try to control the game, and you really can't give up big plays to De La Salle. I think if Holy Cross can just really limit the big plays from De La Salle's offense, Holy Cross probably takes this game pretty easily. But I think that, you start giving up some big plays like we did last week with E.D. White, and who knows, this can end up being a really close game down the stretch.
Yeah, and we got to watch this one last year. That was in Ullman, I believe, right?
Yes.
That was,
yep,
and that was Holy Cross played a pretty solid game in that one. Mm-hmm. And I think, the beginning stretch of the schedule is important for both teams. I'm interested to see how this one looks. Iman Williams is a guy from De La Salle. Running backs, talk about their offensive line, and maybe the two go hand in hand, a perfect marriage when you have a really good offensive line. you make your running backs look really good. And they do tend to have a stable of running backs at De La Salle that just seem to go in and out seamlessly. And as you mentioned, when you're behind a former O-line coach like Coach Jarrett, it really helps to emphasize the big boys up front. The team runs through you. And we know the games are won and lost in the trenches, although not everybody loves to acknowledge that all the time. We love to talk about the playmakers.
Yeah. Yeah, just to recap last year with Holy Cross, De La Salle, if you remember, it actually started out a very close game. I think De La Salle got up early in the game, and De La Salle made one bad throw as a pick that I think went all the way in the other direction. Quickly after that, Holy Cross broke a big run. It was Claude Johnson, the quarterback at the time. He broke a big run, and all of a sudden it was like the floodgates open. I think Holy Cross ran away with it pretty big. But early on, it looked like it was going to be a really close game where Holy Cross was able to just kind of steal some momentum and just kept it rolling throughout the second half.
Before we move on to the next one, 2 notes. But Keyron Smith in this role as finally kind of like the lone lead back, it's really interesting to see after all these years as, again, a major contributor, but a contributor. When you have 3 guys deep at running back, you're kind of switching in and out, like you mentioned, with Claude Johnson, with Caden Ando, like kind of switching in and out, but really as the bell cow back. It's interesting to see him in this role and see how he's emerged in week 1. We'll see if he can continue to push forward, and I would expect him to continue to build that steam moving forward. You had something?
Yeah, no, I was just saying, I completely agree. Like it's kind of cleared the space for him to really find more rhythm throughout the games. I think a lot of times running backs is about rhythm, and the more you're carrying it, the more the game slows down and your vision gets better, right? And so and I think you turn into a little bit more of a patient runner as well. When you're only getting, when you're splitting carries with 3 other guys, it could turn into every time I touch it, I feel like I got to try to score, and so I think for Keyron, I think the game's going to slow down for him. He's going to take on a little bit more wear and tear this year probably, but he's certainly going to I think he's going to have a huge year. This is the year that he's been waiting for. He's a super talented kid.
And De La Salle on the O-line, the opposite side, we talk about running backs and how big the run game is. A lot of 290 guys up front, like some really big guys. That defensive line we've talked about the defensive line for Holy Cross. I think they're solid. I think that'll be a fun one to watch. But let's go ahead and move on to our next matchup. In the next game, we have Lakeshore taking on Chalmette. Chalmette, a really big win in week 1, kind of picking up where they left off as we talked about. Really impressed with the way they've looked, getting a lot of recognition kind of from the media and in rankings and polls. But unfortunately, Lance, you don't win the game on polls, although Lakeshore is definitely a team that's up there too in the mix when you're talking about these rankings that are coming out. But I'm interested to see how these 2 teams go at it. 2 option style offenses going toe to toe, and it'll be an interesting dynamic on the field when you have 2 of those types of teams playing each other. Who can control the ball?
Yeah, for sure. I think for Lakeshore, they got to be able to establish a run game. That's what they want to do. Everything is really tailored off that run game. They're going up against a tough box. You've talked about the guy, Shelman High has a stud linebacker that's already committed to South Al. So, that's going to be a fun matchup there as far as how can Chalmette really, slow down and stop that Lakeshore run game. If Lakeshore can control the clock through their run game, it becomes a really tough game, I think, for Chalmette. If not, I think this is one that probably goes in Chalmette's direction. They can really do it. Chalmette can run the football. They can throw it with Breeze Wilson. They have a receiver that's good. They have a really good tight end that caught a couple of touchdowns last week as well. And so, it feels like Chalmette's just a really well-rounded team. This is when most teams hit their big stretch typically later in the season, it feels like Chalmette, they hit theirs kind of early because they got Lakeshore this week, huge match. That'll be a playoff team. And then, of course, Holy Cross next week. So, you could probably argue that Shelman High's 2 biggest games of the season are right here, right now.
So, as a coach, though, what does that do for your team when you are playing these massive games at the beginning of the year? It doesn't de-emphasize the end, for the record. I'm not trying to say that it does, but you're getting really up for these early games. Mm-hmm. And, maybe the juices aren't flowing as much down the stretch. You mentioned you have Holy Cross next week. That's a big rivalry game. That's 2 teams who really want to get that win. But when you play these big matchups early, how's it kind of impact you down the stretch, kind of looking forward to playoffs?
Yeah, I mean, I think that first off, Showmet, they're in a much tougher district than what they were used to anyway, being in that North Shore district. So I think there's still a level of excitement where they're playing teams that they aren't super familiar with. I think they would have been more skeptical to or up for some letdowns when they were in that previous district. But I think that. But I'm with you. I mean, I think that they do get big wins early right now. Like it's on Coach Tucker to really keep those guys level-headed and understanding that they're entering district play and these district games. That should be your first goal, is really winning a district championship before you enter the playoffs. And so, yeah, I mean, it's all. But of course, you're dealing with 15, 16-year-old kids, and who knows where these guys' minds are bouncing around. But whether you're winning or losing, try to keep them level-headed. It's never as good as it feels. It's never as bad as it feels.
Yeah, and Lakeshore has some guys as well. Brody Laudermilk at quarterback, who is a really athletic guy. Audrey Gross, running back, whose name I've seen a ton. Really athletic back as well. I'm fascinated to see how these two offenses which team can control the ball, which team can control the pace of play and maintain possession. I think ultimately that's going to be who wins this game. No shocking with the styles of play, though. In our next matchup, we have Brother Martin taking on St. Paul's. A nice test for both of these teams. St. Paul's always plays these games early on. I feel like St. Paul's kind of makes their way through. They're like an honorary Catholic League team, if you will. It's like if there's a jamboree, they're playing Rummel or they're playing Brother Martin. Like they're constantly on these teams' schedule. So it's kind of like a second cousin to the Catholic League, if you will. So, I mean, really, and again, big physical style of play. They've got big boys over there. A sophomore offensive lineman right now who's getting a ton of notoriety. Took a trip to LSU this past weekend. I believe he has an offer from Tulane. I'll get his name in a second. But, yeah, I think it's going to be a fun game to watch.
Yeah, so St. Paul's, they scrimmaged Curtis. They jamboreed Rummel where they lost 7-0 to Rummel.
There you
go. And then they won last week. I'm drawing a blank on who they beat. They had a solid win last week. I think they won pretty handily last week, whoever they beat. And then, they got Brother Martin this week. And so, you think about all the success that St. Paul's has had recently in their district. You got to think that it's because of the way that they prepare for their district, which is they play even tougher games in their non-district, right? Or certainly in their jamboree and their scrimmage combined with this Brother Martin matchup. And so it's easy to say that, they're prepared for Brother Martin because they played Rummel and Curtis already. With that said, Brother Martin presents a completely different challenge, right? You think about Curtis's veer offense, Rummel's typically power counter zone running the football. Coach Bonice and Brother Martin, they are going to line up in 100 different formations. They're going to use Easton Royal all over the field. They have Hudson Fields who can throw the ball. In my opinion, one of the more talented junior quarterbacks in the entire state. He can throw the ball all over the place. So while they're all coming from the Catholic League, I think Brother Martin presents a totally different challenge for St. Paul's, and and likewise both ways. I know St. Paul's is going to line up. They're going to be physical. They're going to be ready for Brother Martin's big offensive line, because they've already seen these big offensive lines versus Curtis and Rummel too, right? And so they certainly won't back down from them, but I know it's a whole different challenge with this Brother Martin offense.
Yeah, Dylan Shabassi is the guy I was talking about, sophomore, 6'4", 320, already has offers from Tulane and Georgia State. Really a physical player if you want to keep an eye out on, but also one of the best linebackers. I know I mentioned Tyree Darrensburg as Chalmette. Again, I stand by what I said, but really 1B type situation, or right in that conversation, is Dylan Post, linebacker at St. Paul's, a really a nice playmaker for this defense. He's going to have to be on his game. Again, linebacker against a team like this, when you do have that jet motion running all over the place, and that's what they're going to do with Easton Royal. Watching the game against East Ascension last week, they would put him in the backfield. They'd motion him over into a pistol set. They would jet sweep him to the sideline. They'd let him return punts. He would cross field from left to right side and back again. I mean, he is a very dynamic playmaker, but as you mentioned, Hudson Fields, that combination around for 2 years, I might add, really could be one of the most dynamic quarterback wide receiver duos in the state this year. And they're definitely a pair that are going to pose a ton of threats to this defense, but really to the Catholic League the entire year. And it should be a fun one to watch. Moving on to our next matchup, we have St. Thomas More taking on Catholic. St. Thomas More coming off of their first loss to Karen Crow in 19 seasons just a week ago in a 3-point loss. Now, they don't play every year, but still, that's a long time for a team that you see pretty close and regularly. They lost by 3 points to Karen Crow in that ball game, while Catholic comes off a narrower than what the score looked like win over a Destrehan team, Lance, that you've audibly praised many times on the show about how talented this Destrehan team is and being maybe one of the best teams they've had in a long time.
Yeah, this will be a great matchup. You talked about it. I mean, Karen Crow's got a really good team this year, so it's really tough for St. Thomas More to get off to an 0-1 start. And then who you got next? Catholic. And that's right. That's tough. And so, but with that said, I mean, all that type of experience is going to pay off for St. Thomas More down the line when they can look back and say, we've already seen the best, right? And so I think you do build confidence here, whichever team comes out on top or even comes up short in this one. I think, if this is just a hard fought game that you can be proud of and the way you guys, really fight the whole game, both teams leave this game just more confident, better football teams and more prepared for their upcoming stretch.
Yeah, and St. Thomas More is you'd argue, one of the only teams, or the very few teams that really posed a threat to Carr a season ago. They were, their defense does a great job flying to the football, and this Catholic team is extremely multiple, does everything really well, has two quarterbacks. Really it's two that I'm saying. There's two guys that played a week ago. They listed like 5 guys that could start. Running back Miles in the backfield has a ton of offers from all over the place. Justin Baptiste is a guy who, again, maybe gets overshadowed by Miles, but had 4 touchdowns against Destrehan just last week. They have talent all over the field. Jude Chamberlain, the tight end that I think got an offer from Tulane recently, really big guy, and that's not even mentioning the defense, right? You got Bradford at safety, who's arguably the number 1 safety in the country. There are dudes all over the field for Catholic in this game. And St. Thomas More might not have necessarily the same name brand guys, if you will, a bunch of guys that are getting recruited, but they do have a great quarterback in Cole Bergeron, who's Virginia Tech commit. I think a lot of the game is going to kind of lean on him. The offense kind of went through him a week ago. He did they handed the ball off some. They did do a little bit of motioning, but really he's going to run the ball. He's going to pass the ball. The offense has to flow through him. And for you to throw off this Catholic defense, you got to make sure you establish a run. And that's very difficult to do. But also look last week, Destrehan was held to 80 yards passing. Let me repeat that again. Destrehan with 2 dudes at wide receiver is held to 80 yards passing. So, interesting matchup. I think it'll be a really fun one to watch. But then again, anytime we have 2 teams of this caliber get on the field, man, it's going to be a fun one to watch. It's
a huge PowerPoint victory, right? Because both of these teams are going to win a lot of games. And so you get down to week 9, week 10, you start doing the math on PowerPoints, and somebody's looking back at that game going, man, if we would have could you imagine if we would have beat Catholic where we'd be at, right? And so that's the type of those early season matchups I'm always thinking about, just PowerPoints down the line.
So go ahead and looking at a few other interesting matchups. So what we also have to remember too when looking at these games, a lot of these games last year, Lance, were canceled or scheduled against somebody else because of it was hurricane last year. So I know there was a really weird situation where St. Aug went all the way up to Cecilia last year for week 2. So like schedules are kind of typically you play on that two season rotation. There is some kind of mix and match here. One of those games that I know did not happen was Riverside and Newman. And this game is really interesting. Both teams coming off of a week 1 loss. If you look at Riverside, they dropped a game last week to a Terrebonne team that South Lafourche's coach said might have the best offensive line that they're going to see all season. And again, that's a higher level team. Terrebonne is very big up front, has guys who are getting scholarships all over the place, a really athletic wide receiving core, a few cornerbacks that are really playmakers. And, that's a team that Riverside lost to. But they're going to take on Riverside they competed, and that's saying something, right? They have all freshmen and eighth graders in the secondary. They have nothing but sophomores and below at wide receiver. You do have a 4-year starting quarterback in Brock Bourgeois. And, you do have talented receivers, right? Like you do have Kendrick Johnson. And Kendrick Johnson is a heck of a playmaker out there. But, again, they're very young. So they're going to be taking on this Newman Ball Club that's going to be kind of licking their wounds after a tough loss to St. Charles on the road. And we saw moving around Jake Randall, the quarterback. It's going to be an interesting one to see. It's going to be a test for both teams. And I'm kind of fascinated by this matchup.
Yeah, it just feels like two very different teams from if they did play a year ago, right? I know especially on the Newman side, of course, you're talking about a whole new head coach, quarterback, almost everything is new this year, right? Doesn't mean they can't go compete and still win some games. But it feels like this would have been a totally different game and two different teams playing each other just a year ago. But I'm always cheering for Coach Lee Roussel, head coach at Riverside. He's going into year, I want to say 4 at this point already. It feels like he just started it. How far off am I with that?
I'm checking it now.
I thought you had it.
No. I typically do. I think you're right.
Yeah, I think year 4. And so, I think this is one of those games that in year 4 as a head coach, you hope that the stuff you've done, the consistency you've built, the culture that you've built, this is a game that you can go win because this is a program that we've been building for 4 years. This is a like opponent, but, an opponent that is, again, has a lot of new faces over there at Newman. So I think if you're Riverside, I'm leaning towards them here just as a program win. This feels like one of those things that I know Coach Lee Roussel does a great job of, and they find a way to win games like this, just because of what he's built, the culture he's built over the last 4 years.
I think the big matchup in this game, Lance, is going to be, you talk about a culture win for Riverside. Jake Randall is and again, I don't mean this disrespectfully, I just mean honestly, right? This is going to be a college running back at Tulane. He's a better running back than he is a quarterback. But I'm going to tell you what, Lance, for a guy who's playing a position kind of like a fish out of water, he certainly played it well against St. Charles. And the game didn't go their way, but he can make plays back there. He does have some guys out there on the outside. Hendricks Hill, George Loop, Charles Wilson. You have some playmakers, and really, when you look at Riverside, I just mentioned their youth is in that secondary. So right. I think that's what this game is going to come down to: is the youth of Riverside. Can they mature? Can they mature in a microwave over a week or over this preseason, if you will? Kind of marinate, kind of come together as a unit, and take on a Newman squad that took a loss week 1, but St. Charles is always a very defensive sound team. So we'll see how it plays out.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. Brock Bourgeois, he has to do a great job of controlling the game, being the senior, experienced quarterback that he is. When I've watched Newman really run away with games that it felt like they weren't supposed to run away with over the last few years, it was more than just Eli Friend. It was the guys that you just mentioned coming up with turnovers, like George Loop. These guys, they always had their hands on the ball. They're just these good ball players back there in the secondary. And so, I think that's the key for Newman. If they're going to win, they got to force some turnovers, count on those guys on the perimeter, like you said, to, really take advantage of some of those younger guys from Riverside. So, it's going to be a good one.
And going from that game to St. Charles, the like opponent that we just mentioned, St. Charles taking on Lutcher this upcoming week. Lutcher dropping their game to Slidell, 0-1 on the year. Uncommon for Lutcher to be 0-1. But what I will say is some of their biggest championship, I know a little bit premature to be talking championship for anybody, but this is a team that will be in the thick of it at the end, I would argue, from even this point in the season. From what we know, Coach Jenkins has done with this program over the years, and we've seen from them, we know that this team is going to be in the thick of it. But really, Lutcher coming off of a tough a few of the championships they really won after like dropping four games in a regular season or 5 games in a regular season. So not uncommon territory for them to schedule tough non-district opponents. Caden Parquette, man, he's defensive lineman for Lutcher. He is a playmaker. He is a guy that St. Charles offensive front is going to have to keep an eye out on. St. Charles likes to run the football. And you have Skylar Edwards in the backfield. You also have Evan Dufour, who's another guy, a fullback. Gabe Kugler as well, kind of a full H-back, if you will. He kind of touches the ball in some different ways. That's going to be the big matchup, I think, is seeing how this front seven of Lutcher, which was really good a year ago, to complement that secondary that has some playmakers. How will that front seven of Lutcher match up against St. Charles's rushing attack? Because I think ultimately that's going to be what this game comes down to.
Yep. I like everything you said there. Completely agree. When I think of teams that are going to get much improvement and really grow from week 1 to week 2, often think about teams with a new quarterback, which is what Lutcher has here. They have a new quarterback. I know he kicked and punted for him a little bit. Dylan Delaneville trying that one. But, new quarterback, right? Anytime you have a new quarterback, there's just different things you got to do offensively. New guy calling the plays, new guy being communicated with from the sideline to the quarterback, right? So, it's common to see teams with a new quarterback get off to a little bit of a slow start, but only get better and better and better throughout the season. I actually think about St. Charles Catholic. Actually, when I think back to them last year, that was kind of what they were. They were in a similar boat. So I think they're probably just in a better spot this year, mainly because they have a returning quarterback, right? So this will be a good matchup. I wouldn't be surprised to see Lutcher really get back on track pretty quickly after that week 1 loss.
Yeah, and Landry LeBlanc, the quarterback that you mentioned at St. Charles, really going into his 3rd year as a starter, really has gained some experience. He is a junior. He didn't start his full freshman year, but got a long stretch of the season. He became the starter. But on that defensive side of the football for St. Charles, Brooks Monaco all over the field and Creed Marix, 2 guys that were flying to the football a week ago. I think you're going to see them do the same. But when you talk about Lutcher, you can't help but overlook they got playmaker Ashton Starks. Ashton Starks is a guy who, when he touches the ball, is dynamic. I've seen him play a little bit of both sides. He can do it all. He's a guy who the Comets are going to have to keep an eye on. You've got to know where he is on the field, whether it's offense or defense or special teams. I don't care if he's drinking water on the sideline. You better make sure he doesn't run off and make a play on you. He's a guy who can be electric and dynamic. But we know both teams are going to come out and play hard in this one. Kind of a rivalry game, so a fun one to kind of circle in and see what's happening there in LaPlace, Louisiana tomorrow.
What about Quantez Joseph, 6 foot 250 from Lutcher? Apparently getting some carries. He was an O lineman at one point. Now he's playing running back. He's in some carries at 6 foot 250. We'll have to see how Brooks Monica takes on. That'll be a nice little challenge for him.
Yeah, like I said, there's definitely some things to keep an eye on there too. Zabinski, can't remember the guy's name, but Zabinski. Lance, you talk about difficult names for me to pronounce. Imagine me calling that one last year, trying to pronounce that one. But Zabinski, linebacker for Lutcher, really does a great job flying the football. It's going to be a fun one, and I think when you have 2 rivals on the field, and maybe not necessarily like as intense as some of the other ones out there, because these being a part of their, like the FCAs do things together, like it's kind of like a friendly rivalry, but not really. Kind of like the friend that says something behind your back and then smiles in your face, kind of like, can't wait to see you. But that's the kind of rivalry this is. Like it's kind of frenemy-ish, But I'm excited to see it. Another game to look at though is, and we don't know a ton about this opponent, but American Heritage coming to the Superdome to take on Carr in a huge matchup. American Heritage went on national television a few weeks ago, and they're 1-1 on the season. So this is their week 3. Lance, I didn't catch it. Was it was a 21-point comeback, or did you watch that one? I know we were.
I'm not sure. I know they're 1-1. I'm not really sure.
But I know they came back to win that one. Diabell, a lot would argue, is the number 1 rated quarterback in the country, coming from American Heritage. I think it's like 13 players who are getting offers on American Heritage. Although, let's be real, so is Carr.
Right.
Carr has a ton of talent as well, and I would argue the Ndamukong Suh of Louisiana football right now, which is Richard Anderson. That is a big boy who can, again, he can take up 2 blockers at a time.
Yeah. When I saw him up close, the only thing I could think of, he looks like I trained a big NFL D tackle by the name of Albert Huggins. And when I walked up to him on the field, I was like, this dude looks like Albert. Like, this is unbelievable how big this kid is as a high school football player. But yeah, I mean, you said it, the thing that pops off the screen, of course, I'm looking at American Heritage. Texas commit, Florida State commit, Georgia Tech commit, Troy commit, Toledo commit, Western Kentucky commit, Georgia Tech commit, South Florida commit, and then they'll have more to come. I mean, usually the only team I look at and see all that is Carr. So, yes, it's going to be all the stars will be out. I'm sure that that's going to be a heck of a game.
Yeah, and when you look at Carr, again, I keep mentioning Richard Anderson, but I want to give some other people some of the credit. I mean, I keep talking about the same 2 guys, but Xavier Owens, again, receiver from California. I've mentioned him before, 4-star wide receiver, committed to Fresno State right now, really good playmaker. Maurice Williams, Texas commit, safety position, heck of a ball player. I apologize, no. Maurice Williams is committed to Colorado currently. See, they got so many guys committed, you lose track of who's committed where too. But yeah, and then you have Aiden Hall, LSU commit. This is how they go. And actually, we have a guest coming on in just a second. Hey, Cass, how's it going, bud?
I'm here.
Somehow Cass is in one piece. We appreciate him coming on. I know he's had a lot going on, but Cass, we're just talking.
Had to throw up on my shirt earlier, so I switched shirts. I'm ready to go.
So look, we're talking some American Heritage versus Carr, and how fun that game is going to be.
That's going to be awesome, man. That's like, I think I heard Lance, you were talking right before I hopped on. It's like 2 similar teams, it seems like, with all the prospects and the talent that's going to be on the field, and that's gonna be a fun one in the Dome when you followed it up after U-High and Rumble. I'm interested to see how Carr matches up with these guys. I mean, it's obviously we know how good they are in state and the talent that they have, but going up against a national power, traditional national power, that's going to be an extremely exciting matchup. That's going to be some of the best football played in the Superdome all year long.
Yeah, I agree. We guys, at one point we had talked about going to a pregame show out there. I literally can't right now, but up to when we heard that the Holy Cross game and De La Salle game wasn't going to be. Oh, by the way, guys, we are live. This is our first live. We tried to go live last time, but we figured out the kinks. We are live on BSN for the first time. Again, thanks to everybody there for dealing with me trying to figure out that process. But yeah, we were talking about going out there and like doing a tailgate show, but I can't anymore. But I was about to tell, when I heard the game was about to be like, hey, y'all want to do it? I'm down. But there's be 2 great games in the Dome, though. I mean, so Cass, look, you obviously weren't here. Any games you kind of want to hit on before we kind of take a scroll, if you will, through the rest of the state and pinpoint any games?
There's 2 that I'm interested to see the results of. Both of them are happening on the North Shore. Franklinton at Covington, and then Brother Martin at St. Paul's. The Franklinton-Covington game, Covington blew out Bogalusa 49-0 last week. Franklinton coming off of a state title appearance. That's always a fun matchup. It seems like they play every year, kind of a rivalry there. But Covington, I think, is going to be really good this year. And Franklinton returned a lot of pieces from that state runner-up team last year. So that's a good early season test for both of them. And then Brother Martin at St. Paul's. Brother Martin goes on the road and beats East Ascension last week. And then they travel again to the North Shore. Let's see if somebody is going to be smart enough not to kick to Easton Royal and not let him return a punt or a kickoff for a touchdown. But to see how St. Paul's matches up. I know St. Paul's really likes their team. They think they're physical. They're big. They got a really good running back in Cody Corrales. This seems to be one of your traditional St. Paul's teams and how they play. And Brother Martin is extremely talented, and that's going to be a fun one, a good measuring stick, I think, really for both of those teams.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned Corrales. Corrales is a guy I've been seeing a lot about. Excited to see how that game plays out. Any other games you had anything on? I know you. I feel awful because you were really pumped up. You said I got a bunch of notes. I'm ready to go.
I had them
Any
all.
any other games you want to touch on that we kind of already? Anything games you want to mention that we already discussed or you want to touch on?
Did y'all talk STM Catholic?
We went through the list, bud. So it's all you.
Mm,
We're gonna give
Well,
you
just-
your moment.
That one there, that one's exciting. It's in Baton Rouge, I believe this week. That's always a really good game between two really, really, really good programs. And I think it's even more important this year. Catholic coming off of the big win against Destrehan last week. STM's rolling into that game 0-1. Obviously they have Catholic on Friday night, but it doesn't get any easier for the Cougars. They have Acadiana and Neville right after that. So if STM is going to get on track and get back to winning ball games, they're going to have to, it's going to have to start this week against a really, really good Catholic team.
Yeah, and let's go ahead and I'm just going to kind of scroll through and see any games that kind of pique my interest. And so I don't know if you guys have an opinion on this one, but I know Laurelville goes to Ascension Catholic. Laurelville is a team that's really competitive, is a team that's going to make some noise. Ascension Catholic, new head coach this year. I can't remember his name off the top of my head. I know he's from Texas. Really going to be interesting to see how they play in that one. Other games, Cecilia taking on Santa Ma. That's one that stands out after the way that we didn't talk about the Santa Ma game last week, but Santa Ma pummeled Bird, which is shocking. I believe it was 42-7, I believe, in that matchup. And Babineau, the quarterback for Santa Ma, had himself a heck of a day. Cecilia dropped their game to St. Martinsville, which is a team that a lot of people were kind of looking at as a sleeper pick. That should be a fascinating one to watch.
Yeah, no, I was going to say that Cecilia coming off. Obviously, they beat Franklinton last year in the state championship. They lose their coach. Coach Dennis Gaines goes to East Ascension, and then that score last week, St. Martinville beating Cecilia, was kind of surprising to me. So it'd be interesting to see how they bounce back this week.
Looking at some other ones, Union Parish taking on Alexandria. We've talked about Ash a bunch, ton of talent on that team. Union Parish had a rough one last week, so we'll see if they can bounce back in this matchup on the road against Alexandria.
Did we hit Pulaski West Monroe?
We did not talk about that one.
Okay, so they go to Pulaski Academy from Arkansas. They don't punt; they go for two every time.
Oh, I noticed. I've seen this. Yeah.
It's a different coach, but it's the same philosophy.
I didn't realize it was that team, the team that never punts. I didn't realize. I know about them. I didn't realize it was them.
They scored 67 points on West Monroe last year. They beat West Monroe 67-47.
I want to watch this game now. You just sold me.
Well, hey, I guarantee. Text me. I'll send you the stream. I'm telling y'all, this is. And I'm going to continue harping this all season, man. This is a beautiful state of high school football where it's not just one person covering the sport. It's all over the place. And you can, if you have enough iPads or screens, you can watch 4 games, 5 games at one time. And it's it's my favorite time of year, man. I love it.
It's awesome.
It's incredible.
It's awesome.
Yeah, so I'm looking at any other ones. Jumps off the page. Lake Charles College Prep taking on Barb. Barb is a team that's a high-flying offense. They lost last week to Airline, which is, I would argue, and I'll say they were undefeated in the regular season last year. Probably one of the top teams in the state. Airline, Darby at a wide receiver, the best wide receiver in the state, a lot would say. Committed to LSU, incredible talent. But Barb, again, kind of held their own for a bit. Lake Charles coming off a loss to Westgate, a Westgate team that is super athletic. 2 sophomores on that team have scholarship offers to Miami already. And one of which I would say is Chance Archangel. For those who have not heard this young man's name, Chance Archangel, defensive end for Westgate. I would say right now, even as a sophomore, if you gave me top 5, top 10 players in the state, I would be remiss to not have him on that list. Guy is a freak of nature, causes massive disruption. So it was a tough loss, but again, it was a tight loss in that game. So those two teams going at it, kind of fascinating to see how that one looks.
Yeah, that's going to be good. Westgate 3 years ago, won the state championship. They've always got a really talented team. That'll be interesting. Did we mention Karen Crow and LCA?
I don't think we did. I was going to get to that one. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's another interesting one because it's two teams obviously coming off of huge wins last week, and they're again neither one of these teams play an easy schedule. Karen Crow's got LCA this week, and then they go to Zachary right after that. LCA again beat Rumble last week on a block extra point. Their schedule is ridiculous for the size school that they are essentially, but they got Karen Crow this week. Then they turn around and play Westgate, Shaw, and Central in the next 3 weeks. So opportunity for some big wins for both of those teams.
Any other ones that stand out to you, Lance?
I mean, we really hit the big ones I wanted to talk about. You know what I mean? I feel like I had my chance already. So, yeah, I don't think there's really anything else that really jumped out to me. Who does St. Aug have this week?
St. Aug, I can tell you in a second.
St. Aug.
St. Aug has East St. John, and that game is going to be played on Saturday. East St. John had a tough one last week against St. James. Yeah, I don't know if we really talked about St. James yet. St. James is going to be a formidable team this year. I think we might have mentioned them once. Really one of the premier quarterbacks in the state. Kid's a sophomore. I said, it's unfair. It is unfair the amount of talent that St. James produces at quarterback. Yeah, like I said, I think if you were to tell me that they had over the past 15 years, they probably only had four starting quarterbacks. Like it's unbelievable. All of them equally as talented as the next. And his shoot, I was trying to get his name. Juwan, shoot, I can't get it. But he's an incredible player for them, a really big young man as well. So be interesting to see how they look moving forward. But trying to see if there's any other ones.
Just interesting schedule quirk. I don't know. They scheduled the games this way, but Ruston doesn't play a team from Louisiana until week 6 now.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
I mentioned that last. I mentioned that. I think it was like last week. Like I called it. They're going on the Texas tour. Like
they go. They got Cabot High School from Arkansas this week, and then they play Longview from Texas, Midland Legacy from Texas, and Stephenville from Texas.
So how in today's game, how does that affect PowerPoints? What goes into that?
So they do it. I'm going to assume that it's the same way they do it in baseball, and you take those teams' wins. You don't get points for playing up. You just get their wins. So if you win the game in football, you get 10 points plus their wins. Yep. Texas and our season ends at the same time, so that doesn't affect it. But like if their season were to go past ours, you only get the points up to the end of our season. But I think it's interesting. I think it's really cool, first off, but I do think it's interesting that they're doing that. One, I guess they're close to all those schools, but I mean, why not give your kids that experience to go play somebody from another state? You know, it's good football. It's really not that big of a travel for them. They don't have to travel that far, but just playing somebody new from a different state and help. For us, it gives us a little state pride too to go. We all hear about Texas high school football a lot. Last year, Ruston went 3-0 against them, and the three teams that they played in Midland Legacy, Longview, and Stephenville all made it past the third round of the playoffs in Texas.
I mean, let's be honest, guys. How many teams are knocking on Ruston's door and saying, "Please, can we come play you?"
Right.
That's a difficult thing. When you're a really good team, nobody wants to play you. So you've got to go find games, and maybe you don't necessarily want to go up to Pulaski if you're West Monroe, but you're West Monroe. People are not looking at your name and saying, "We're good." I think we'll find somebody else to play. They're going to go out of state and find somebody to play as opposed to playing them. So
no, that's a good point too, because when we talk about all these big matchups in non-district games, it seems like the same teams pop up, and I feel like those same teams all have the same issue. It's hard for them to find people that want to go play them. So they all play each other. which is great for a high school football fan because you have matchups like Catholic and Destrehan or Catholic and St. Thomas More. But yeah, I think part of that reason is it's hard for those guys to find games.
A few quick other games as we're kind of winding down. Acadiana taking on Zachary. Interesting game. Zachary regularly in the thick of things at the end. And, Acadiana coming off that tough loss. This one is really fascinating, though. Edie White taking on Jesuit. I really like that matchup. I think it kind of jumps off the page to me. Not a game we really pinpointed and harped in on, but Edie White trying to come back after that tough loss to Holy Cross. Maybe they felt like one got away. Jesuit coming back after that long road trip. And, one last one, just as a caveat in there. Natchitoches Central taking on Evangel. Natchitoches Central, a team that has some pieces there. I want to see how well they can challenge Evangel, and we'll see how fired up Evangel comes out this week.
So I'll just add in Natchitoches Central. Their head football coach is Brad Laird, who was the head football coach at Northwestern State. His defensive coordinator is Jay Thomas, who was the head football coach at Northwestern State and Nichols. And so they got to have the most decorated, high school football staff, right? How many schools can say they have two, long-time college football coaches? And, they're coaches that literally coached for 20 years in the college level, and now they're coaching the high school level. So I think more than anything, Natchitoches Central, they're going to have a clue what they're doing. And so we'll see how they prepare for Evangel, you said, right?
Yeah. I feel like that's like those two guys have only coached. Like this might be their first high school job. I'm sure when they got their start, they might have been in high school, but
Brad Laird was the head coach at Ruston. Had a couple really good years at Ruston before coming back to Northwestern. But So Coach Brad Laird's dad is like a legendary coach at Ruston. And so he grew up in the high school game in that regard. But of course, the majority of his coaching life was in the college world.
No, good for Natchitoches Central too. I hope they do well. They hired 2 years ago. Was it Jess Curtis went there from Manny and left after 1 year? Like that was a big hire for them at the time. I think they built a football only facility, if I'm not mistaken. They did some upgrades, and then he left, and they were kind of left trying to pick up the pieces.
And so they had a terrible year last year because they were picking up the pieces. I was just up there in that town hearing about it, and so but now they're in year two, and there's a lot of positivity around Natchitoches Central now.
Look, and I'm gonna go ahead and I got to watch some tape on this team too. I know random guy from South Louisiana watched the tape on Natchitoches Central, but kind of piqued my interest with. I saw Coach Laird was there. Jeremy Lowe, free safety, incredible return man, flies to the football in the secondary, going to be a guy. And KJ Newton on the other side of the football, 1,000 yards receiving last year, 10 touchdowns, deep ball threat. And then you also have Owen Smith, really nice quarterback who, again, 5'10", 160 from what I've seen. Again, if somebody sees it and you send it, I'm sorry if I get the measurements wrong. I know how y'all athletes are, right, Lance and Cass? I wasn't one, so I can, I don't have to worry about that. I played left bench, so I didn't have to worry about all of that. But, look, man, he's got an arm. He's a heck of a playmaker, and with those coaches in place, I think it'll be fascinating to see if this team can improve from last year, but also maybe knock off a team or two that open up a lot of people's eyes. They have players on this team. I'm just interested to see. I think they'll beat somebody that shocks you. I'm just wondering when it is this season.
I feel like they've always had some talent up there too. They've always had some pretty good athletes and some talented players. It's just that district that they're in up there in District 1-5A, it's not an easy one to get your footing and try to find yourself, but hopefully they can.
1-5A and 2-5A, both. I think 1-5A is got more teams and it's deeper, but then 2-5A, you got Alexandria, Neville, Washita Parish, Ruston, West Monroe, Pineville.
Yep.
It's pretty brutal. Anybody else got anything? We've about at that hour mark, so just wondering if anybody. I know Cass said you got to come in hot, so I'm wondering if you anything else you want to touch on.
No, that's it. I was listening along while I was trying to put the boy to bed and keep from getting thrown up. So y'all. So I tell you what, if people aren't tuned into this show, then I don't know what they're doing on a Tuesday night.
Look, man, 34 people. It says 34 people live, so we appreciate that. And I know, I'm a Lavo cow. I like to talk. I apologize. Sky's Ahmad. Have you seen this? Have you seen this yet? Running back out of Grant. Did you see what he did last
This guy
Friday
had
night?
10 touchdowns last week.
420 yards, 10 touchdowns. What is that, man? What are we talking about? How is this real life?
Insane.
That's unbelievable. Incredible
That is
performance for that
insane.
young man.
Absolutely insane.
All right, I'm done. I promise. I'm done.
Well, this was the slate of games. I tell you, like week one, I think there was some big headliners. Obviously, there's some headliners this week too, but I think there's a lot of depth this week with teams playing, and now we got a week of results, so we can kind of see where teams are. I think Lance, you mentioned it last time. Teams make their biggest improvement from week one to week two, so we'll get to see. I'm also interested in seeing two things this week. One, the special teams, which you can't. You can practice it. I get that, but you don't know until live bullets start flying. So week one's always a little iffy on the special team stuff. The other thing, and it's supposed to start getting, not that it was cold, but it's supposed to get warm right back up this week. The cramps. The game I was at last week, there was a period of time, the middle of the third quarter to the middle of the fourth quarter. I'm not exaggerating. It was every single place somebody was down with cramp. And apparently it was like that a lot of places around the state. So to see if that can affect games or how that shakes out.
Guys, y'all going to any games this week? Y'all going to any games this weekend? Guys?
Not sure yet. Might catch that Holy Cross game Thursday night. Really not sure. Got to check my wife and daughter's schedule.
That's right. Check with the boss. I plan on parking myself on the couch with iPads, TVs, and laptops and watching as many as I can.
You're gonna text Jason, I want these games, and I'm gonna be able to send them to you, and I'll find them for you. I'll hunt them down.
Send them to me.
After this week, me and Jason go on a nice little stretch of VSN games, I believe, right? We're going to be at tag only just about every weekend, I believe, moving forward. So looking forward to it.
Yeah.
It's here. It's about to be fun. We got district games next week, too. Not week 2, but week 3.
Well, some of these districts are so deep they have to. Like you gotta. They said District 1-5A. I think there's shoot. I'm gonna try to count them real quick. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. There's 9 teams. Yeah, there's 9 teams at 1-5A.
They start week 3. Week 3 they start district.
Yeah. All right.
Yep. No, that was good. That was awesome. Glad I got to jump on for the last part of it.
All right, so I guess I'll go ahead and close it out. We want to thank everybody for coming in. Cass, again, for hopping on when he could. We know my guy was in the trenches out there trying to get on the show. Lance joined me the whole time, so we're gonna head out. That'll do it for us. For Cass, for Lance, for Jason. I'm Jason Dewey, and remember, let's lay ball and let the good times roll.